everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wisdom Wednesday. I'm Dr. Jayne Bock, a baker and influencer, and today I wanted to talk to you about New Harvest. Where I am up in the Pacific Northwest, we are just now starting to wrap up wheat harvest, and I thought it would be a really good time to talk about New Harvest and what that means for you as a baker moving into this critical time period. If you're not aware, wheat harvest in the US starts anywhere from approximately late May, extending through September, depending on which region of the country you're in and what the weather conditions have been in that particular year. And as I mentioned right now, we're wrapping up here in the Pacific Northwest region of the US. And what happens is at New Harvest, obviously we're harvesting all the wheat that's been growing for the past year, whether it's winter or it's spring wheat, and it's going to soon be available on the market for grain processors and millers to purchase and start using in the production of their various flours and flour products. Now, every growing season is unique, and as a result, depending on the weather conditions that year, the characteristics of the wheat and the flour that comes from that wheat are going to change. Additionally, new varieties of wheat come out onto the market every year, and growers have the opportunity to determine which variety they're going to grow that year. And so over time, you see a shift in the varieties being grown as advances are made in wheat breeding in terms of better resilience to climate change, better drought tolerance, better disease and pest resistance, better quality properties, better nutritional properties. All of these things breeders are trying to continue advancing. And as a result, you get new varieties continually coming onto the market and older varieties slowly starting to be phased out. So the varietal mix, so the genetics, are continually changing every year. And when you combine that with the changing weather conditions each year, it means that each harvest is unique. Now, millers have a tough job when it comes to new harvest because they're running out of old crop and they do have to switch over to the new crop. Their goal is to make that as smooth as possible because at the end of the day, they're trying to produce a consistent flour product for you year in and year out. But they are at the mercy of nature to a certain extent. Every milling company will have a different strategy for managing new harvest. And it's really important that you talk to your miller or you talk to your supplier to get a sense for what that strategy is, and more importantly, when that changeover is going to happen. So as we start moving into September, October, November, as the old crop is depleted and millers switch over to the new crop, there may be some changes in the behavior and the performance of the flour, partly because the new crop is just that, it's new. But as well as the characteristics are actually changing because you have a different varietal mix and you have different weather conditions, as I've already mentioned. Now, some milling companies will gradually blend in a larger and larger percentage of new crop until they're 100% switched over. Other milling companies take the strategy of a very firm cutoff date. On a certain date, they're going to completely switch over 100% all in one go from old crop to new crop. And that's a decision that differs depending on each milling company, each milling location, and kind of what amount of old crop they have on hand. And so in that September, October, November timeframe, you may notice your flour performance changing. And it's probably because your miller is switching over to new crop and they're doing their best to ensure a consistent blend and consistent performance. But if you see flour performance shifting, it's important that you contact your miller or your supplier right away. Let them know what you're seeing, and they may be able to help you identify another solution to those changes in flour performance. So that's what's going on if you routinely see your flour performance shift in the fall months here in the US. It's probably because there is that changeover happening between old crop and new crop. You need to be aware of it. And if you proactively communicate with your miller or your supplier in advance, you'll know when that changeover is occurring. And you can probably get some information as to how the flower performance is going to change. It's going to require more or less water. It's going to be a little bit stronger, or maybe it's going to be a little bit more mellow. Maybe it's going to have more extensibility or less extensibility to it. The miller should be able to communicate this to you because just like my laboratory, they've probably been testing it extensively. They've probably figured out how they want to proceed with their blends, and they know what the behavior of that flower is going to look like from a functional dough rheology testing standpoint. And so they should be able to give you some communication as to how the flower performance is going to change so that you can go ahead and make adjustments in advance, or you know to expect those changes. And like I said, if the changes start to push you outside of what's acceptable for your product and your process, again, communicate with your miller, communicate with your supplier, let them know what change has happened and what you need it to be, and they should be able to help you identify the appropriate flower. So hopefully that is helpful. That's all I have for you today for this episode of Wisdom Wednesday. And as always, you can go to our baking industry professionals pages on Facebook and LinkedIn if you have more questions. And until next time, see ya.